everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now the video we're doing today is something I've had in the bank for a long time and I've been meaning to get around to making this video. But I actually, every now and again, I have so many ideas for the videos, I'm not really sure where to go. And so I put it up to my patrons to have a vote. And so you can see here all the things we got to vote on this time, of the different directions we can go with the channel. And actually we had two quite clear winners in mastering the keyboard in Renoise and Amigo only jungle. So I think I'm actually just going to do both of them, and those are going to be my next two videos. But this one is about mastering the keyboard in Renoise. Now I've made this really handy PDF in Photoshop with all my Renoise shortcuts up. You should be able to see on the screen now. I'm just looking on my other monitor. And what I think I'm going to do for this tutorial is actually walk you through step by step all of these hotkeys and basically just quickly show you what they do. And then I'm going to give you a few examples of my editing workflow. And this video, I'm sure there'll be some stuff in here for more advanced users, and it's mostly for people trying to get into the program. And one of the biggest and best things about Renoise is the keyboard workflow and how much of the time you spend using just the keyboard and not the mouse. Compared to all the other doors where there's so much clicking involved, Renoise you can actually pretty much stick on the keyboard for 90% of the stuff you do, if you follow along with all my guides and tips I'm going to show you in this video. So let's get started with it, and I'm going to just walk through these things one by one. Okay, so we're in the pattern editor now, and the first thing to probably mention is this focus. So these orange rectangles are dictating where the focus is in Renoise, and I can alt click into these different windows to set the focus. I think you can probably do down here as well on plugins to set the focus to different windows. But almost all the hotkeys I'm showing you use the focus on the pattern editor, and then you can control this instruments tab and the pattern matrix. You can control them all with hotkeys with the focus on the pattern editor. So you want to make sure that the pattern editor is focused for a lot of these to work. Now the other thing to quickly jump down the list a little bit before I go through it in a more orderly fashion is just these navigation tools. And up here in the right hand corner you have these presets for your navigation, and essentially all you can do or to set them up is to go to a window, and then I have a sampler set as 3, and then you just right click, and so now whenever I press F3 it will load the window that I've saved that preset on. Generally, I just use the F1 to go to this pattern editor and F3 to go to this sampler window, and that's the most, probably 95% of the navigation stuff. I just use those two ones. But a good trick is if you've ever got the focus set somewhere else, and this often happens when you're trying to record and you're pressing S to try and arm the record mode and it's not working, and you have to then come and alt click this window. A better way to do this is actually just to press F1 and it will focus the pattern editor again. The next thing to dive into is shift spacebar. So spacebar will play the pattern from the top of the pattern. If I jump to the next pattern, it will play from the top of this one. But if I come down with my arrow keys and come down the pattern a little bit, if I want to play from this line, I can press shift and spacebar to start playback from the point of where this cursor is here, which is really useful. And then the other one you can do is just press enter to play one step. Now that's ringing out a lot more just because the way I've got everything set up with the pad is just a one sample, and also the breaks are playing onto the end of the sample, so it's not just giving me one hit. But if you just have one kick drum programmed in there, you'll just hear a single kick. So you can use enter sometimes to demo the sounds, but almost always I'll be using shift and spacebar to kind of dictate playback from this from the position I want it. The next one is using the alt and up and down arrows to move around this instruments tab, which is very simply you can move around this way. You can also put your mouse over this and just hover, and then use your scroll wheel on your mouse to flick around it. And probably the thing I use the most actually is also you can come in here and you see how this Amen is playing an E3 and the instrument is 0-0. Well, rather than having to scroll here and find instrument 0-0, I can actually just press shift and enter and it will jump to the kind of nearest instrument from this cursor, it will locate it in this instruments tab, which is really handy. So I do a lot more organizing in this track area, because you can't really do too much in here with colors or labeling. I sort of organize in this area and then use this. If I show you another example, if I wanted to program the bass and change it up, I would just press Shift and Enter, and it would jump straight to that big sine bass. There's also a sneaky button in here which basically does that thing automatically. When I click here, you see it's going to jump instantly to Amen if I've got this kind of cursor button on, or if I go to the tribal drums, it's going to jump to this instrument. So those things are all really handy for kind of locating the right instrument to be playing with. So we've got Alt up and down to move around the instruments tab, but then we can also use Command up and down for moving around the pattern matrix. And then in a similar fashion, we can also hover our mouse over here and scroll with our mouse wheel to ping around the pattern matrix. Now you can obviously use hotkeys like Command C to copy or Command X to cut. But one really handy one, which is quite unique to Renoise, is paste continuously, which is Command P. And where this is really handy is if you say are programming a hi-hat with velocities like this, if I want to paste this whole thing down, I could obviously select this area and paste it and come down and paste it again. But a quicker way to do it is to copy it like this and then come down to this line and copy and then paste continuously. Now, interestingly, you have to do the selection in the way you want to paste it. And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to figure out exactly how this paste continuously is working, where you have to leave this extra gap and sort of select some silence sometimes for it to paste evenly. Another hotkey I use all the time is Alt-Z and Alt-A. So what Alt-Z will do is if you press it once, it will select this kind of one line down, and then if I press it again, it will do a slightly bigger selection, and then if I press it again, it will do an even bigger selection, and then the same with Alt-A, but going up from the position of your cursor. And so like you can see, if I just want to get rid of this automation data in here, or these tracker effects, the easiest way for me to do is just use Alt-Z and then just cut that information out with Command X. Otherwise, it's quite tedious if you have to sort of hold Alt and Shift and drag with your mouse all the way down. It's so inefficient in compared to using the hotkeys. So yeah, definitely things will start to reveal themselves in Renoise, how much easier the workflow becomes when you figure out some of these hotkeys. You can use Command and backslash, I think it is, to solo a track, and then also just backslash to mute it. Or you can actually right click. If you right click the play button, you can solo tracks in this way, or if you left click it, you can mute them as well. Another handy one is how to actually delete stuff in Renoise. And when you first use a program, you think pressing delete is going to get rid of all the information, but it only deletes the kind of small section that you're selected on. So you can use delete for micro editing little bits of information out, or you can actually use Alt Delete to get rid of the whole line. So if I press Alt Delete, it's going to get rid of all the information in that line. But another thing I do a lot is press Shift and then right arrow. And that will actually select the line, and then I will cut that information as well. So both of them, Shift right arrow and then cut, all those things work really well for scrapping or getting rid of information. Another hotkey I use all the time, especially when I'm recording information in, is Shift and F3, and that's going to delete the current track, the selected pattern of the current track only. So you don't get rid of all the information, but if you're recording stuff in live, and you can go and press Command Z to kind of backstep, or you can just wipe all the information in that pattern with Shift and F3. You can press Command T to make a new track, or Command Shift T to delete the currently selected track. And then another thing I find myself doing is using Tab to jump from one track to the next, and then Shift Tab to go backwards across all the tracks. And then finally you can create groups. You can either hold Alt and drag one track in another to make a group, and then just drag more tracks in there, or you can just press Command G to make a new group, and you can make groups upon groups upon groups. Okay, you can only do 6 levels, but Logic can only do, I think, 2 levels of track stacks, and the fact you can do 6 in Renoise is really handy. And then the way the effects line up is they have a hierarchy of the effects. So all of the kind of tracker effects you put on this top layer group will affect all the subsequent groups, which is really cool for doing break effects and all kinds of stuff like that. Now, there are loads of amazing third-party tools for Renoise, but there is one that beats all of them, and that is the SuperNudge tool. And whoever made the SuperNudge tool is an absolute legend, because I couldn't use Renoise without it. It's the reason I never use Redux, because you can't have this tool in there, and it should really be a part of the program. But all it is the ability to select notes, and then with this hotkey I can nudge them up and down. Rather than having to cut stuff and always paste it around, it's so much more satisfying and just a better workflow to be nudging stuff around the place. What you can also do is kind of delay things by a fraction. So you have a fine tune for the SuperNudge, and then we have this one that jumps per step. Now, I've set these up on my keyboard. You can see I use Shift, Control, Alt and Command all together, and then the arrow keys. And the reason I do this is because I'm always using the arrow keys to tab up and down. So my right hand is right here on the arrow keys already. And so all I have to do is add the modifier keys, and then I can start moving the notes. And I have tried a few different workflows with the SuperNudge, but this one definitely works the best for me, and I feel is a very efficient way of doing it. Okay, so now it's time to look at the numpad. And I know a few people will be using Renoise on laptops, or they won't have access to a keyboard with a numpad. But I have to say, probably half of my hotkeys are using that you really need to master the keyboard in Renoise come from the numpad. So it's really, I think, essential if you want to get the workflow really down. And some of these are native, and a lot of them I've kind of customly mapped myself. So to start off with, we have home, which is going to go to the top of the currently selected pattern. So you can use command up and down to jump around these things in the pattern matrix, and then home and end to jump to the tops and bottom of them. And then also page up and down to ping around the patterns by, I think it's every 16 lines, page up and down will jump around the pattern. So if you couple those things in with being able to use shift spacebar to play from your currently selected point, and obviously using the arrows to jump around and fine tune things, you can speed around the pattern and matrix and the pattern editor at a ferocious speed in Renoise. A lot of the looping functions in Renoise are also kind of stored away in this numpad area, and we have enter. You see it creates this block kind of cycling range. So you can press numpad enter to create the block cycle, and then you can hold command, and you can use plus and minus on the numpad to move the block around, and then times and multiply to increase the block size. Now, one other quite cool trick I learned recently, which I've now mapped to my numpad, is I just press 5 on my numpad, and it will essentially create a selection the size of the cycle block. So if I make this smaller, I can actually make a smaller selection as well. And I've been using this a lot recently. I'm finding it really handy if I want to copy that little bit I'm working on and move it around. Before, I probably would hold shift and press page down to select this area, but then I have to come back to home and press copy. Whereas if I just press 5 3 times, I can just copy that, and I'm not having to move the kind of cursor location. So that's a nifty little one there. And then now let's dive into kind of the main juicy bit, which is all my custom mappings on this numpad. And I've kind of put these stickers on just to help myself memorize with some colors what's really going on here. Probably the biggest one is, I think by default, transposing a semitone is like Alt F3 or something, or Alt F1, something pretty annoying like that, where you have to do a weird hand movement. So what I've done is map transpose to 1 and 2 on the numpad. So I just select a note and I can transpose it up and down. I can also press shift and 2 to go up and down an octave. 1 and 2, so I can go semitones and octaves right here with such ease, which is a great one. Another really handy hotkey, which also had a weird native function, is this jump to next line with data or something like that. What have I called it? Move to next row with note. And so I've mapped these to 6 and 3, and if I cut some notes out, you'll understand a little bit how this is working. But it essentially is focusing on your currently selected track, and it's just going to jump to whatever the next note is in that track. You know, when you combine that one as well with these page up and down and the home end, you're suddenly absolutely flying to get to exactly that point of information you want. And I know you can use the mouse wheel to get around this stuff, but it's so janky and imprecise in compared to using these hotkeys. So I would really recommend, especially these ones on the numpad I'm showing you, are really essential ones. I've got number 4 mapped to rendering the currently selected track. So if I go right click and go, I think it's track, and then render to sample, that's what I've mapped it to. So you could go through all these settings, but actually just being able to press 4 and then print out anything that was in that current track, I find immensely useful. The other ones, this one's amazing as well. So this is actually a tool as well. It's called the Convert Instrument Number tool. I'll put a link to it in the description. But right now we're working on instrument 00, which is this Amen. But what happens if I wanted to swap all of these? Maybe I duplicated this Amen and I changed some of the settings in this one. Maybe I changed the pitch and did some different processing. Well, I could manually go through and just put ones at all of these points here and manually change the instrument. But a way better way is to get this instrument number tool, and then I've mapped this to number 9, I think, on my keyboard and on my numpad. And then what you have to do is select the instrument in the instruments tab you want it to be. So I want to change to instrument 01, and then I just press 9 and it automatically maps all of those notes to the new instrument. And I think there's 2 more really that are crazily essential here. One is this full stop is going to do this follow playback. So a lot of time when you're editing or when you first start using Renoise, the whole pattern will be pinging around and you'll be trying to edit, and every time you change a note, it's going to start pinging around from the start again. Well, if you actually take off, press full stop and take off this follow playback, it will play, but the position will be locked, and it's way easier to edit and then demo things and test things out in this way, I find, even though sometimes you do want to see the whole pattern rolling around. If we've got a plugin open like Pigments here, what you can see is I've got the UI open in this plugin area, but if I go back and press F1, it's going to get rid of that UI, which is a little bit annoying. So you can either double click in this Instruments tab to open it up again, but a quicker way is actually just to press 0 on your numpad, and you can press 0 again to close it, which is really quick and handy for opening up plugin UIs. So you can go up and down to move around this window and then open up different plugins really easily, all from your keyboard, which is amazing. Okay, wicked. Now we've been through all my essential hotkeys, I think it'd be really worth me just quickly showing you some editing tips and tricks and a bit of my workflow there. And I think there are 3 main things you can do to edit notes and data in Renoise. We can hold shift to make selections, and we can even hold shift and use these page up and down controls, or shift and home end to select the whole pattern. Or we can use these Alt and Z commands, or Alt A to make upward selections. So we have all these ways to make selections, and then we can cut and paste to move stuff around. And even just cutting individual notes is something I'll do all the time. If you know where a kick drum is, sometimes it saves you having to figure out where that is with any of these other methods. The other really common and probably thing you will do the most in Renoise is using the ARM mode. And if I press S, I can activate this edit mode is what it's called. And what you can essentially do with edit mode off, I can demo the hits of the break. So if I press F3 so you can see, I can jump through all the hits of the break, and say I wanted to find this snare, I can find where the snare is in this window if I want to, and then press F1 to come back to the pattern editor. Then I can press ESC, and then I can enter in that note information. I can also do the same thing on my MIDI keyboard here, so both work the same way, your MIDI keyboard and your computer keyboard, for entering note information in this way. The last technique, which I do a lot of as well, is transposing information. And the way I generally do this is, say I have, let's go to this information here. I think this is like a kick drum. If I just have this soloed as well, it might make it easier. To do this, you want to take off the follow playback, so you can just play from the currently selected line. And I will select my line by pressing shift and right arrow, and then I will come up with my arrows to a little bit ahead of it, and then so I can play a little bit before often and hear the pattern, the kind of notes leading into it. So if I put a note in here just to make this all make sense, maybe I wanted to edit this note information on line 14, but I want to preview it and hear before. So I will come up with my mouse after selecting that line with shift and right arrow, come up to line 8, and then I can press shift and spacebar to play from this line. And I can transpose that information because that's the one that's selected. The transpose information is going to work on that note. So it works really well with that snare. Then I can come and just copy that and paste it maybe again. I can come up here and demo again. That's cool. Maybe I want to change this one now. Yeah, nice. So it sounds good with the shuffle. Maybe we can double the shuffle. Oh, it's a little bit scrappy there. So maybe I'll do my favorite tracker command, which is going to cut that note. So a little bit gated. Maybe this one will work better. Nice. And then just to prove the point, select this bit and paste. Maybe I paste continuously with Command P. Nice. That sounded cool up to about here. And then we're going to have to do something a little bit different here. But I think you get the idea. I don't need to go and edit a whole pattern to prove this. So you can either cut and paste your existing pattern around. You can use the edit mode and kind of enter information from your computer keyboard or your MIDI keyboard, or you can transpose the information by selecting it, moving your cursor, usually so you can hear properly kind of what's happening leading into that note, and then transpose it up and down with these the kind of hotkeys I've assigned to my numpad. Anyway. Yeah, this one's been long overdue, and I've really just sort of rattled through this, hopefully quite quickly, and explained it clearly enough. I'm very excited to get onto this Amigo only jungle project, which will be the next one. I think I might jump back into Logic for that potentially, to kind of balance things out. And then we are just going to be rip-roaring to the end of the year with loads more jungle content. And yeah, I've got lots and lots planned, as you can see from all those ideas I put up to my patrons at the start of this video. So yeah, thank you all for sticking with me, and I'll catch you very soon in the next one. Peace.